Gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Albo.
Mr. Speaker, it's actually House Bill 278, and I move to adopt the committee substitute.
Questions on adoption of the committee substitute? As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. Substitute is agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, I'll explain the bill and then tell you what the amendment does. For those of you who are in the Northern Virginia region, you might recall an article in the Washington Post about an individual who saw some human bodies in a funeral home that he believed were stacked on top of one another, not stored in a proper condition. It created a very big outcry among especially the veterans groups, because the funeral home that was cited in the article was a funeral home that did a lot of veterans funerals for area funeral homes in the area. As you can imagine, in Northern Virginia, we have a lot of elderly World War II vets and Korean vets who unfortunately are passing away quite quickly. I started looking into it, and I'm sure a number of you did too, and what we found was that while it wasn't a good way to do business, it wasn't necessarily illegal, nor was it against the funeral board's rules and regulations. I met with this funeral home's officers and directors, and I have to tell you I was pretty impressed. They did not come to me and say that they made no mistakes. What they said was that they could do better. And what this group did was they went to United States Air Force Base in Dover, Delaware, and watched how the best of the best treat the veterans, deceased veterans, and they implemented new systems to not have this happen again. So I don't want anybody to think that they're the bad guys on this, but what the state board that oversees funeral homes did was established a regulation, and what this bill does is codifies that regulation that basically says that after 48 hours you have to refrigerate the body. You can see those in lines 66 through 69. So that's what Bill number 1 does. Bill part number 2. What happens when a person passes away and they designate somebody to be there, the person that takes care of all the funeral arrangements, but later on a family member comes up, funeral home doesn't know what to do. Who do they follow? How do they handle it? And what this bill does is sets up a system by which a person who is designated gets to carry on the funeral the way he has been designated unless somebody else shows up within 48 hours. All this language is agreed upon by everyone concerned in the industry. Now, I think that the substitute here, we made a mistake because one of the topics, and I asked the gentleman from Charlottesville, Delegate Bell, just to make sure, was that we did not want to mandate that this person was designated had to be financially responsible for the funeral if he didn't want to pay. And somehow some surplusage language got in here, and so what my amendment asks you to do is on line 80 after arrangements, insert a period and eliminate the rest of line 80 and 81, and that should implement what the subcommittee actually, or the full commission wanted to do. So I would move that amendment, Mr. Speaker, and then ask that we engross the bill and pass it to its third reading.
Can the clerk report a floor amendment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker. Floor amendment to House Bill 278, offered by Delegate Albo to the committee substitute. Line 80, after arrangements, strike the remainder of line 80 and through subsection on line 81.
The question is on adoption of the floor amendment offered by the gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Albo. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The floor amendment is agreed to. Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading? As many as favor that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to its third reading.